Okay, how we doing, everyone? Erich from Orchestra Gold, and this is the Gold Transmission. Today we're going inside someone else's music again, a band that's very near and dear to our hearts here at Orchestra Gold. Today we're talking about the Super Djata band and Zani Diabaté. Okay, so that wah pedal you just heard, that's Zani Diabaté, and this episode is long overdue. But I want to say something from the outset here. A lot of people ask me how I got into African music, and I hear people ask other musicians that same thing. And I used to kind of jump directly into talking about the African musicians that really inspired me, like talking about that time in my 20s when I just got obsessed with Fela Kuti and got every single record of his that I could and basically listened to him nonstop for maybe 5 or 6 years. It's tempting to want to go that route, but as I got a little bit older, I realized that I had to back up a little bit and zoom out a little bit more when I talk about that. I didn't come to Malian music with a blank slate. I didn't come to African music with a blank slate. I had an already kind of established set of tastes and preferences. And that was really rooted in blues and rock music. And blues and rock music are really, really shaped by African American musical traditions, almost exclusively. They come from those. So funk, Parliament, Funkadelic, Little Richard, all of that stuff, all that music really came to inform the rock music that I grew up loving. So I can't really talk about Super Djata band without acknowledging that. The only reason that I'm talking about African music at all is because of African American music. And I think that's important to say out loud. And it's important to acknowledge that, maybe some people think that me saying that is performative. And maybe there is like a touch of performance that comes in when I talk about that. But there's also a deeper layer to it, which is that we have to acknowledge the oppression. We have to acknowledge the power dynamics here. Those artists that shaped rock music were not really acknowledged or helped out in the same way. If you go deep into those stories, you see that those artists were taken advantage of. And if you want to dive a little bit deeper into that, there's this beautiful podcast series called A History of Rock in 500 Songs, and it's by a gentleman named Andrew Hickey. Really, really, really recommended. I feed dropped one of his episodes last time. So, yeah, just acknowledging that the only reason we're talking about African music is that we're talking about African American music. We wouldn't have, I say this sometimes in our shows, but we wouldn't have the Rolling Stones without Motown and Martha and the Vandellas. We certainly wouldn't have the Beatles without Little Richard. And we probably wouldn't have Led Zeppelin without Muddy Waters and T-Bone Walker. So, yeah, shining a light on that stuff. And there's another reason that this episode in particular exists. Because Super Djata band, they're kind of criminally underrated and under-talked about, especially here in the US. In Europe, they're better known. But this episode is a little bit, in part, here to fix that. And just kind of shine the light on some music that's really, really, really amazing that you may not have heard about. Okay, so with that, let's get into it. I spent a long time when I first went to Mali, just dialed into djembe and dunun music. When I first started studying, it really took a long time for me to just develop a base foundational knowledge in that rhythmically forward, I should say, music. And then it wasn't until I really had been going for a long time on the djembe and dunun music that I got interested in what you could call orchestra music, which is really just the vast suite of music in Mali that's played on guitar, bass, and drums. Not just one style, many styles. And one of the first records that entered my orbit was this record called African Pearls Electric Mali 70. Check out the feed drop that we did on Afropop's deep dive into the vagaries of vinyl reissues. But that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. And inside of that reissue is a track by Super Djata band called Soso. And that's one of the first ones of theirs that I really just fell in love with. And this is a really funny track. There's this conversational piece at the beginning. And I'm going to relate to you my understanding of it. I could be wrong here, but I hear him talking. I hear the singer telling his friend that the reason he's not looking so good is because of all these mosquitoes. And if they could just find a way to pick up all the trash and put it in a centralized location, the mosquito problem would be so much better. I never found that written down anywhere, so just take that as my personal translation, not like an established fact. But there's some really, really, really great guitar playing by Zani here with the wah pedal. And this is like the first instance that I heard of a wah pedal in that particular performance style. And there's a very specific reason why that wah pedal just really touched me the way that it did. And it has to do with where I come from too. So this is a disclaimer. This is my personal thread right here. I grew up loving 90s rock. I grew up outside of Los Angeles in what's known as the Inland Empire, and Jane's Addiction. Dave Navarro's guitar playing was a huge influence, and it's a huge reason as to why I picked up a wah pedal in the first place. In fact, until this day, I use the Jimi Hendrix version of the wah pedal because that's what Dave Navarro uses, because he really, really loves like the thick, mid-rangey tone of it. I don't want to lean like too heavy in this direction. I'm not trying to say like Jane's Addiction and Super Djata are the same, but you know, finding echoes of that world inside Malian music, it was just really personal and special to me. And there's three like really interesting areas where I hear this overlap. And I'm going to name them here, and we're going to go deeper into all of them a little bit later. But the first one is the way that the guitar kind of follows the flow of the song instead of locking into like a fixed verse and chorus situation. Jane's Addiction actually talked about that a lot, Eric Avery and Dave Navarro. A lot of their songs actually got built around Eric Avery's bass lines with vocals layered on top. And they really stayed away from this impulse to write just like catchy hook chorus, verses, that whole thing. They didn't really have a formula, I guess is what I'm saying, as much as they were just like following this thread, the thread of the music. not this thread of like, okay, let's make a verse and then a chorus. So that's one. The second is delay on the vocals. Delay on the vocals. Very important. This is something that happened a lot in Jane's Addiction that also happens in Super Jata and in Mali in general. And then 3, the use of the wah pedal. So just keep those 3 in your head. We're going to talk a little bit more about Super Jata, and then we'll come back and tie it all together. Okay, now, Zani Diabaté was born in 1947 in the Sikasso region of Mali. He comes from one of Mali's most well-known griot families, the diabatés. As a kid, he learned the bolon and the balafon before he ever even picked up the guitar. By 16, he was in the National Ballet du Mali. There's videos actually of him that you can check out online where he's a multi-instrumentalist, right? But not only that, he was a dancer. So there's videos of him dancing and doing these crazy acrobatics in addition to just like mastering the guitar. Amadou Balake, who's a legendary musician from Burkina Faso, actually helped him on percussion. And it was at the Ballet National that he met Daouda Flani Sangare. And he's the one who introduced him to Alou Fane. They're the 2 other singers that he worked with in Super Jata. And all 3 of them were from the same region. So they shared a lot of the same cultural references. They started out as a trio called Harmonica Jazz, with Zani playing harmonica, yet another instrument. Then evidently they changed the name to become Ganawa Band, with Zani shifting over to guitar, and Alou and Fulani were singing and playing Kamale Ngoni, which we'll talk more about later. The lineup grew and they became Jata Band. And by 1974, they were recording for Radio Mali. Radio Mali is Mali's official radio station, very important cultural institution. They do a lot of recordings, and they were responsible kind of early on in Mali's history for the audio and video recordings that disseminated throughout the country. So they also had Daouda Flani Sangare and Alou Fane on vocals, and those 2 would sing together. They had amazing vocal chemistry together. They featured Dunanke Koita on guitar, Abu Kamara on bass, and Bamba Dambale on congas. So that is the same Bamba Dambale that we're going to talk about later, because he founded another group that I'm going to talk about. But the first album of Super Jata came out on Discorama, which was a label in Abidjan. So a lot of Malian artists in that era were going to Côte d'Ivoire to record because they would work with Ivoirian record companies. We talked last time about the importance of understanding how Malians classify their music. And for the purposes of that conversation, picking that up again, Malians would call this Bamana music, music of the Bamana people. So Zani and Super Jata Band, they're known for playing what they call Bamana music. Worth underlining is just how much Zani is loved by Malians. He was the Minister of Culture for a long time. And even inside of the band, they wrote a song that was basically praising him. His own band wrote a song praising him. So that's pretty cool. Here's what this sounds like. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what makes this music so cool. And starting with my favorite topic in the entire world, wah pedals. Okay, so let's check out this song, Signana, by Super Jata Band. So I don't know how he got a wah pedal in the 60s or 70s when he was recording, but he somehow did, and then he just mastered it. His playing of the wah pedal is just like so masterful. It's amazing. And nobody's talked about this or written this down anywhere that I could find. If you know the story behind zani and the wah pedal, please get in touch with me, because I really want to know about that, you know? And this leads me into another thing. We just really have to talk about how amazing of a guitar player zani is. He has this sixth sense for when to change things up behind the singer to make it sound really, really, really sweet. So I want you to check out this next track here and just listen to how subtly he changes the guitar line when the singer changes. And just listen how it brings this really nice flavor to the song and switches it up just enough, especially because you have like this repetitive thing kind of happening in the background. So this is really fun for me because this gets into a whole way that maybe our tools for understanding music are really shaped by Western preferences, and the converse of that being that our tools for understanding African music are really blunt. We have this notion of songwriting structure, actually, even musical structure, as this almost like didactic, analytical, sort of cut and dry thing, which it can be. But what's interesting to me about this approach is that it can be tempting to say, oh, this is all improvisation based and therefore it's unstructured. Actually, there is structure here. It's just that it's not the same as Western structure. It's structure which is arrived at spontaneously. And because it's arrived at spontaneously, it usually flows better. And because the songs are more repetitive, the song structure is just very different than it is in Mozart or even a Rage Against the Machine song. There's this skill that I've seen lots of Malian folks hone, where they're able to seamlessly create structure behind a singer who's flowing. And that's really like its own skill. And when the didactic, like Western, dare I say, Cartesian approach to songwriting doesn't work, that can sound really formulaic. But this method is more spontaneous and more flow-based. And because there's always a flow to it, it typically lands in the body differently. And this is interesting because this is where Jane's Addiction kind of comes back in. A lot of their songs were also built around very repetitive things. Often Eric Avery's bass lines, and the vocals would come on top of that. And because they decided consciously to stay away from the impulse to use this Cartesian verse, chorus, bridge, chorus approach to eschew formula, they were just following the thread of the music. They were following the flow. And I think that's part of why I love the Jane's Addiction songs, and why, to my ears as a teenager growing up in the Inland Empire in the 90s, they sounded really fresh. they weren't over relying on the kinds of structures that can inhibit a song when they're used inelegantly. And I'm not saying that the verse, chorus thing never flows. Sometimes it flows and it's beautiful. It can be the most beautiful thing in the world. Flow can happen in any particular structural arrangement. But, and I am a big fan of Rage Against the Machine. You know that if you listened to 2 episodes ago, what we talked about. But sometimes the songs are a little cookie cutter. It's just easy to guess when the change is coming and where the song is going. And Jane's Addiction was a guessing game the entire time. It was impossible to tell where they were going to go. And I would argue that that same energy shows up in this music as well. And maybe this is where it comes from. Maybe this is an untapped area of African genius that people just don't talk about. But this structure being kind of a loaded term that comes from our Western notions of understanding music. It's a construct. It's a shorthand. And if it doesn't fit into this Western song format, then we call it unstructured and pure improvisational. Maybe not improvisational, but definitely unstructured. Where this could be just a different kind of structure, a structure that's based more on repetition and flow and vibe. And I can just throw in my own personal experience as a guitar player behind an African woman who's a singer. There's times when even just inside of one like repetitive thing, a guitar line can really bring a lot, like a subtle change in a guitar line. It can bring a lot to change up, to offer a different color to the song. Okay. Another thing to talk about here is delay. I love delay. The use of delay on vocals. This is something we do on Mariama's voice in Orchestra Gold 2. Something Super Djata does. It's really common. I found delay to be really, really common in the ceremonies that I would go to in Mali. And also, they would get this kind of gritty veneer by pushing the mixers to like their absolute breaking point. I didn't really make this connection for a long time, but having that same parallel show up in rock music was really interesting to me too. And that was probably one of the reasons why I gravitated towards Malian music so much in the first place, because you go to these street ceremonies and just hear vocals that sounded like wonderfully dirty. Here's how that sounds in the context of one of the Super Djata songs. Yeah, so that's a really, really, really cool thing. And it took me a long time to realize that the reason I liked that so much in Malian music was because I heard it in places like Jane's Addiction when I was growing up too. That really delay-drenched vocal thing that Perry Farrell would do. Yeah, just really cool to see that echoed in other places. The bass also sounds really, really good on their recordings. Almost all of them. Minimalist, lovely, super in the pocket. Mariama is almost always telling me how much she loves the bass lines from Super Djata. And to be clear, like when I say the bass sounds good, you know, I grew up in the 90s, so I love deep bass. I had a subwoofer in the car, all that stuff. That's not really present in these recordings because they didn't have the technology for it. But compared to the records of that vintage, the bass hits really, 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 really hard. And a lot of times in that era, the bass gets almost inaudible. So Super Djata really had a nice, thick bass thing going for a really long time. And one more thing, there is a heaviness to the Super Djata music that I just really, really, really vibe with. Some of that may stem from the fact that Dauda and Alufane, the singers, were both really steeped in the donso traditions, a tradition of hunters, mystics, shamans, medicine men, magic men. It's really heavy, repetitive, low frequency, hypnotic music. They actually recorded an album of them doing donso songs. And last but never least, Mali Neula. This is a greeting song, and we play this one in Orchestra Gold. Actually, Mariama loves the vocals. I do. This is a song of greetings to the entire country of Mali, wherever everyone's at. Just a masterpiece. Ooh, thank you, Habibis. Super Jata's music, it is a really huge part of what we do here at Orchestra Gold. It's really inside of the DNA of a lot of our music, the bamana music. And if you want to see this tradition alive today, you should check out Bamba Wasulu Groove. They were founded by Bamba Dambele, who was the conga player for Super Jata for a while. And he, may rest in peace, actually passed, but the band still keeps going. And they've got a track that I'm going to drop in here for you to check out. This track is called Dankelen. So last time, we talked a little bit about the Afropop Worldwide podcast where they went into the vagaries of the vinyl reissue market. Unfortunately, lots of the members of Super Jata have passed, Zani, Alu, and Dauda. So most of the rights to their records stay with reissue companies. I'm not sure what happens to that money after you purchase records for them. I'm just not sure, and it's not easy to find that out. So I was kind of thinking about options. Okay, what could I do to actually support? I know Zani's son, Papis, a little bit. Him and I have communicated before. If you listen to this and you're really inspired and you decided that you wanted to send a monetary gift to him, email me at orchestragold@gmail.com and I'll help make that happen. Also worth knowing that Papis, Zani's son, also has a band together with the sons of Alu Fane and Dauda Sangare. And they play sometimes in Bamako. So if you're ever in Bamako, you may happen upon one of their performances. And they play some of the old songs from Super Jata. It's called Les Héritiers, like the heirs. So that's the thing I could think of doing to kind of make it a little bit better. It's imperfect, I know, but at least it's something. Okay, that's it for this one. This is Eric Huffaker from Orchestra Gold, and this is the Gold Transmission. If you want to go deeper, the vault is where we keep our good stuff, demos, unreleased recordings, behind the scenes music, and more. You can do like a pay what you want model starting at $4 a month, orchestragold.com/the vault. And if you want to take a piece of our music home with you, you can purchase some on our website, orchestragold.com/store. Our music really sounds good on vinyl. Okay, I'll see you at the next one. Peace and love, everybody.